Welcome to the free audio rendering of Not Without Scars 2. Such an insightful and impactful work must be accessible to the countless number of people living similar life experiences. Becoming a best-selling author pales in comparison to creating a tool capable of instilling hope in the multitude of people trapped in the valley of decision. My greatest profit comes in helping others emerge victorious over their life struggles. My goal is to encourage individuals to follow their dream. My message: you must never quit on your faith, pursuing your aspiration or vision. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Take a moment, invite your family, friends and acquaintances, and enemies to listen to this work chapter by chapter. It is free to listen as well as free to subscribe. Peace, love, and phenomenal blessing.
How do I write my life story? I know hurt and pain. I don't like either one, whether physical or emotional. Herein contains my story, Not Without Scars, Part 2. Optimism, perseverance, persistence, resilience. 2 decades of personal struggle. Optimism. I faced the new millennium with hopefulness. Perseverance. My ego, my humble beginnings, my desire to achieve never allow me to turn away from a difficult task. Persistence. Opposition should be anticipated as an effective strategy to victory surfaces. Resilience. Difficulties do not automatically spell termination. Scars reveal my imperfection as reminders of past episodes of pain, sorrow, or triumph. Scars can tell beautiful story endings or relay misery that wishes to remain anonymous. This work is meant to help others who have experienced decades of struggle. When struggles appear to never end, you must get through the night and face the challenge of a new dawn with fresh hope.
Section 1, 2000 through 2003, Optimism. Hey, baby, let's get away. Let's go somewhere far. Baby, can we? Well, I don't care. Hey, baby, let's get away. Let's go somewhere far. Baby, can we? Well, Daydreaming, Aretha Franklin. Optimism, hopefulness and confidence about the future or the successful outcome of something. Having drunk from the well of adventure from various pails of the social spectrum, criminal and legal, secular and spiritual, as well as poverty and wealth, along with apartheid and multicultural interaction, I felt I had found the buoyancy to enjoy a successful life to the fullest extent I desired. I faced the new millennium with hopefulness. I embraced the new millennium with confidence. My future never appeared brighter. My spirit resonated that something bigger than I had ever imagined was on the horizon. Chapter 1, The Publishing of Not Without Scars. Introduction. 2 years into a fresh marriage, the second trip down the aisle for both of us, and a new baby daughter arrival a few short months away, the new millennium was off to a magnificent start. My life was filled with optimism, a beautiful wife, 4 lovely daughters, and a creative rise to community leadership. It was a remarkable time in my life. Entering the year with my 51st birthday in view, elation as to unlimited possibilities flooded my soul and spirit. My mind was focused on achieving the next level of success as each phase tended to trend to a higher accomplishment. With Chris Broussard, at the moment was the NBA reporter for the New York Times, we were closing the manuscript and bringing the final edits for the first print run of Not Without Scars. This would be the first project for my newly founded company, MCO Media Group, Inc. Community Resource Inc. was doing extremely well as the 501c3 nonprofit organization that I had founded. My role as assistant to the pastor, Dr. Otis Moss Jr., at the historic Olivet Institutional Baptist Church had never been more visible. The release of this new work would certainly lead to a book signing tour and preaching engagements. This was indeed the most promising moment in my life. Life certainly unfolds in a succinct chronological order. However, the events never impact or reveal to us their significance in such an orderly manner. This unorthodox manner in which life earnings occur makes our journey, our story so interesting to tell. In our retrospective voice, the mind feeds us with a speech pattern totally more advanced than at the moment each episode exists in real time. Wherefore, my story comes with various viewpoints and reflective thoughts. In some instances, I ask, what was I thinking? In other instances, the question becomes, why wasn't I thinking? And still other moments dictate the question, how could you have possibly thought that? Therefore, I will address issues relative to my sojourn from the inner sanctions of my soul with as much intimacy as the subject matter shall command. Sure, there are numerous other characters that have intersected my life. However, the focus of this segment deals with my life experiences and the impact each forged a meaningful and insightful pronouncement on what would be a life-altering or life-enhancing event, or setting off a chain of events pertinent to my existence. I do not see selfishness with a prominent role in this volume. This is not a self-righteous endeavor to correct the opinions of others about me, nor do I wish to shift events to victimize others and raise myself to sainthood. I will, as much as possible, eliminate other characters or their name. It is not that I have embraced some super protective mode or overbearing caring for what others may be imperiled by. This is an account of my responsibility and what I could not control in my life, which I continue to live day by day. Finally, I do undertake this work as a set the record straight encounter. It reflects what a man has to face in life at the most vulnerable stages. It will also force the thoughts of what occurs to the psyche when the unexpected arrives time after time. The internal clocks move toward the end of life, while the creative genius continues to reveal so much more to be accomplished. The emotional punch taker clearly cries out, I have had enough rejection. No more ideas, please. Yet, the next one holds so much promise that I cannot hide behind pain and seek comfort. I embrace what is next with a triumphant hope and a successful oriented expectation. Historical. The greatest glory in living lies not in never failing, but rising every time we fall. Nelson Mandela. A long personal climb. The distance from my upbringing as the son of sharecropper parents to owning a media publishing enterprise, founding and leading a nonprofit organization, becoming a minister and community leader could never be measured in miles traveled nor height scale. Experiences have reached a dimension too numerous to count. These all result in an accumulation of encounters, exchanges, and engagement, vague and crystal clear, that compile the mosaic of a single solitary life, mine. My formal education did not commence in a formally segregated school in rural North Carolina, but in a room shared with my brother Douglas in our home on a tenant farm. Douglas, who is almost 6 years my senior, had failed a grade in school. His having to repeat a grade in elementary school inspired him to teach me everything he could to prepare me for the educational system that was to become a road for me to venture. He was my preschool and kindergarten teacher. His compassion was the first of many lifelong lessons I learned from my siblings. I have never stopped learning from them. 10 of us, 8 boys and 2 girls. A blend of strength, courage, and the will to survive were passed as a mantra that was cultivated by the freedom that our parents gave us to explore and learn. One was older and one was deceased before I had the opportunity to know them. Yet, I gained so much from the accounts of my older brother's athletic and academic prowess. He was legendary in both areas. My father, Willie Grayold, was a survivalist before I ever heard the term. He knew how to live off the land. No matter how often we had to move from one farm to another, he would always plant trees that produce fruit. He understood the need to plant seeds that others may enjoy the fruit of your labor. His persona and character were conveyed without a textbook or a detailed lecture but by an example. I have learned to respect even more the strength and courage of a man born in 1908 in apartheid America. My mother, Ada Mae Wilkes Olds, was the epitome of the Christian wife, mother, and servant of the community. She served the church that my grandfather, Mark Tillman Wilkes, literally built with his hands and served as a deacon. When all her children had left home and migrated primarily to the northeast corridor of America, she embraced different laboring opportunities as limited as they were in Greene County, North Carolina. She became the first African American social worker in the county. She labored intensely with migrant workers, voter registration, and community organizing. The impetus to succeed for me was in my DNA. My paternal grandfather was listed in the early census of the 1920s as a Negro who could read. He was a community activist without a title. On Sundays, men and women would come to his home. He would read their legal documents and settle any disputes among them. He was the de facto judge without an election. My arrival in Cleveland, Ohio on January 2nd, 1991 was without fanfare. I had only been released from prison on October 4th, 1989, after serving 10 years for bank robbery in the federal prison system. It had taken me nearly a decade to climb to the Cleveland social and political ladder. I was an outsider that lacked local history, but I made up for that with direct action and skill. I was also fearless in the face of a challenge. Publishing a book was not new to me. Not Without Scar was actually my fourth copyrighted work. The first was Words of Liberation from Prison, followed by Redirection of Young Mind and The African American Christian Nation. Each published volume helped me to better understand the literary market and the target audience of my work. By the time I reached my fourth work, I had a closer bond with the print media, television, and radio personalities. Distribution and marketing became a focus for my efforts with Not Without Scars. I was able to secure a full-page article on the forum page of the Sunday edition of the Plain Dealer. The first 50 years of my life had been an epic journey of contrast, from the depths of street life to the ultimate transformation to preaching the gospel. My transition removed me from ignorant insensitivity to a compassionate desire for the healing of the oppressed and voiceless. As an author and lecturer, many doors opened for me on a number of fronts, and what I perceived as meaningful relations across the nation began to unfold. The redemption story of hope was contained in my latest publication, and my life gave much hope for their sons, daughters, and themselves. This volume was truly 50 years in the making, with countless emotional wounds to prove it. Many difficult and many negative experiences had to shatter many of my dreams, but each shattered dream was replaced with a fresh aspiration. My creative imagination was fueled by the prayers of others and a faith that finally penetrated my rebellious nature. By sharing my story with the world, it diffused those who would desire to sabotage my leadership role by harping on my past. The release of Not Without Scars on a national platform gave greater power to the redemption story of my life. It also paved the way for me to address other issues faced by people of color. Solutions are not limited to those with letters behind their name, but more so, solutions emerge from those whose hearts have been inflicted by arrows meant for their destruction. Social Black experience. Never be limited by other people's limited imaginations. Dr. Mae Jameson. Ex-felon to respected leader. Amazon self-publishing did not exist in the year 2000. The costs were very high. The cover of the original Not Without Scars, plus a first print run of 2,500 copies, were over $20,000. This was not the full extent of my investment into the project, which included the co-author and professional editors. I had to shop the original manuscript to potential investors or individuals who would loan me the money. I found one white pastor from New Albany, Ohio, who loaned me the money for the printing and most of the other costs. He used the graphic design department at his construction company to design the cover. He set no timetable for the repayment of the loan. He simply stated, "I believe the book will be a success. When it is, you can repay me at that point." I was able to do so in full. In order to reach that level of trust, I had to make the leap from ex-felon to a respected leader. My transition to activism was launched in the rural area of my family's Greene and Pitt counties in eastern North Carolina. My primary focus or base of operation was Greene County. The rural tobacco country proved to be my media training ground from 1990 to 1991. I wrote countless editorials in the area papers in Greenville, Wilson, Kinston, Farmville, Snow Hill, and Goldsboro. I wrote a regular column in the Black newspaper in Greenville owned by Jim Rouse, who also owned an AM radio station, Joy 1340. The station format was gospel, jazz, and community-based. Jim and I became close friends. He gave me a regular spot to preach a weekly message. He believed that I deserved an opportunity upon release from federal prison in 1989. Jim's role in my activism development was unprecedented. He also believed that success was in my future and that I would remember his contributions to my life at the appropriate moment. His belief in me did not fail as I was able to return years later and employ his services as a paying client. I planned and led a march in Snow Hill aimed at the Greene County School Board. The theme was "No change this summer, no school this fall." Jim used his media connection to attract all the local television stations. I reached out to community organizations in the area. The march led me to take further actions in the area and lead other marches. The events in the rural constraints of eastern North Carolina prepared me for what was to become years later on much broader scales. It was an exciting time as I also cut my teeth as a political consultant in the area. Two of my younger cousins sought political office. Darnell ran for county commissioner and Wanda ran for a seat on the Board of Education. The impetus for my action took place behind the walls of the federal penitentiary in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. I met some of the most brilliant minds that I have encountered during the near decade I spent at Lewisburg. I was prepared for the unknown. It was inspiring to return to prison as a visiting minister. My first church plant was in the rural area of Greene County near Farmville. I also conducted my first youth initiative during the summer of 1990. In a rather obscure setting, the basis for many years of work to follow was being shaped. The divine destiny training kicked into high gear out of the high visibility, which would come later. My imagination transcended what others may have imagined for an ex-offender. Theological. As the Lord said, behold, I lay down afresh the terms of the mutual agreement between Israel and me, a covenant. Before all your people, I will do marvels, wonders, miracles, such as have not been wrought or created in all the earth or in any nation. And all the people among you shall see the work of the Lord. For it is a terrible thing, fearful and full of awe, that I will do with you. Exodus 34 and verse 10, Amplified Bible Classic Edition. Gangster to national pulpits. My early experiences in ministry were very limited. I would get called upon as one to read a scripture or say a prayer, bless the food, say the benediction. I had to literally seek out opportunities. Most of them came out of the area or out of the state. Apostle Moses Townsend gave me the most opportunities, even sending me to conduct a revival in Conway, South Carolina with Bishop Hutchinson. Moses was very shrewd. He did the first night. I was left to finish 3 nights as he received an emergency to return home. My testimony was indeed a strong example of the redemptive message of the Christian faith. The key for me was invoking my ability to expound upon the word beyond the evangelistic message. I had studied intensively the application of the word into daily life experiences. The social justices were of paramount concern. I also had to learn how churches, denominations, and parachurch ministries function. I had only the Bible, commentaries, and religious writing to embrace while incarcerated. Upon release, I had to study religious folks and the politics of religion in a setting that men and women operated as directors of operations. Learning people in religious settings was very unique. I had viewed people in depth from the street life perspective. I had to learn how good people conducted their lives and commerce endeavors. This was a totally different education. Apostle Townsend came to conduct a revival for me in the church I founded, Vision of Deliverance Center. In essence, he gave me a life-changing message outside the church in a one-on-one conversation. You need to close up this church and move to a city. The people in this area will not receive your message. I was in agreement with his message. Several days later, I received a call to come and preach in Cleveland. The pastor asked me to stay over until Monday. He will be returning from California. He offered me a position as the church administrator. Of course, I accepted. I returned to Cleveland on a permanent basis on January 2nd, 1991. It was the beginning of a rise to pulpits on a national level. However, there was a lot of learning to be had at this first assignment before doors would open widely. Many great things were learned in my early days in ministry in Cleveland. I was once again silent. It would be many moments of background work before the acknowledgement of keynote speaker would be my calling. I was still in the learning phase of ministry. The early 1990s taught me the difference between rural ministry and urban ministry, faith ministry and traditional denomination practice. Most of all, I had gained insight into how the leadership of men and women contrasted and were the same without much differentiation.